Alrighty, folks. Call to order the City Council work session for Monday, March 16th. First order of business, we have an old ordinance, which is amending section 4-27 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Vista regarding the dog licensing requirement and incentivizing dog microchipping. This would be the second reading. I think there may be some amendments. Something to consider if we do have the meeting on Monday. I would imagine time is of the essence because we want to get through everything. We may want to table this for April and May, but we can talk about it.
I don't know if somebody's going to make a proposed amendment or not.
Yes.
Well, can I?
Go ahead.
Before you do, is that okay? So I went to the animal shelter, and I'm sure other people did too. It's just not just me. And I sat down and had a really lengthy conversation with Lori and another one of the employees there. And I do apologize. It was a gentleman, and I apologize. I didn't get his name.
Sure.
And we just talked through different possibilities. I didn't have an opportunity to really write up or propose, like you say, amendment or adjustment to the ordinance, and maybe just some additional thoughts. I was wondering if this was something that maybe a couple of us couldn't get together on. It was like kind of, I'm going to call it a committee or something like that, and sit down and craft something. Going all the way to mandating chipping, I don't really know that that's where the intentions lay initially. They also had some other thoughts, and just to give some time to kind of craft something in conjunction with them that they would be comfortable with. I don't know if it really addresses whether we should continue licensing dogs or not, but I'd like to get kind of some thoughts around that, or at least have a conversation about what that entails within the city, how time consuming it is. And we know that there are probably way more dogs that do not get licensed than probably do, right? And in the case of the dogs that do get licensed, what happened? Where does the money go for the licensing that currently takes place? Does it just go in the general fund?
Just goes into general, yeah.
And I don't even know if this is a place we can go or not. Not even suggestion that we need to go there. Again, it's just a conversation that I'm going to have with you at some point anyway. Because I spent some time just researching different cities, why dog licensing, well, pet licensing, because some it's not just dogs, it's cats, it's other animals as well. But it could be collected by the city, it could be collected by the police department, and sometimes collected by the animal shelters themselves.
Correct.
Now, would we be able to, and I'm just asking a question, I'm not saying we should do it, just a question. Could we allow the animal shelter here to collect a pet licensing fee? Because our animal shelter is not part of the city. It's set separate, and it's ran by a foundation. So is that not a legal option, or is it?
We could structure something that would allow that. I think, again, one of the things what I'm guilty of is you all ask me something, and I kind of think I've got to have the full, complete answer for you right now, and I would need some time to think about it. I need to start saying that more, but I think there is a way, off the top of my head, that we could structure the agreement with the shelter to where we're already paying them so much per animal and puppy, and you all are familiar with that. We just renewed it. That if we structured a deal where the city imposed a license fee, which they collected, but they could retain as an offset against these monies that we're paying them anyway, we could structure something like that, and it would get the city government proper, our front desk, out of the taking the money business and people coming up to us.
Right, and
we could do that.
That wouldn't be able to, fully compensate for what the city allows right now, but it could be a supplement to what they're doing already, because I would think that the money we collect would go to them anyway, because typically that's why there are pet licensing ordinances, is to help, collect money to defer the cost of housing and care and things like that. So that's one thing we could do. And then we did talk about, because if you mandate chipping, that doesn't mean it's going to happen, and it probably won't anyway. It'll be just like the licensing.
Yep.
But what we did talk about is pets that come in that are not chipped. If an owner does come in to try to collect that pet, then we could mandate that the pet is chipped before we released it back to the owner.
Correct.
Right? And they talk through a lot of this stuff. I mean, they're really experienced at this, obviously, right? Because if you say, well, we'll give your pet back and we'll chip it for you, it's $20, or if you don't want it chipped, it'll be $50. And they say, well, if we go do that, it's $50. A lot of people are just going, just keep the pet, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah, but people just don't, they won't want to pay that. But I don't want to like maybe, have a long conversation with this about this like right now, but give a little bit of time to sit down and craft something
So you'd be in
that
favor
could be
of
workable
tabling it?
for them
Sure.
and for us, rather than just have it one way or, the highway. No way or the highway, you know what I mean? So anyway, I don't want to just table it and just let it go and not address it.
No.
Because I would like to work with them for something that they would be satisfied with
We
too,
can
pleased
table
with.
May, or, whatever you need, and then come back to it.
So anyway, that's all I was saying then, Linda, I guess.
Well, I think what was originally proposed before it was amended was what they wanted. And they were in favor of the ordinance as originally proposed before it was amended. And the amendment that I had proposed, which Jason hasn't, I guess, done yet.
I'm going to get it to you.
I know, you've been busy, is just real simple, and it's the same thing that Springdale does. The owner, keeper, or harborer of a dog or cat over 6 months old is hereby required to microchip such dog or cat and register by filing pet microchip information with the City of Bella Vista Animal Control that the animal has been implanted with a microchip. Easy, simple, one system. We don't have two systems working, and I think it just is very easy and clear.
And any money that they would get from that, and/or if we let them collect the dog license fee, is in addition to what we give them, not use that as, well, you got $500 in licenses this year, we're gonna give you $500 less. That's separate, use what you need it for, because you know they're gonna need it, and they're gonna come back this summer anyhow and probably ask for more. Don't make that extra money take away from what we're already giving them.
What I said had nothing to do with the shelter. I said Bella Vista.
I know, but Doug is he mentioned that offset sort of what they're giving them.
Right.
Now, I don't want to do that. If we're going to give them an extra $20 a dog for a license or $10, keep it separate. Don't hold it against what we're currently giving them.
Okay, Steve?
I agree with that. Linda, I'm not sure I understand your resolution anything more than a revote on what we already voted on. The city council approved the amendment as it stood. You're trying to take it back
No,
to...
you amended it. I'm trying to take it back to what it was prior because I think it makes no sense for us to have two operating systems.
All right, can I finish now?
Sure.
I can't amend it by myself. The city council voted on it. We approved it.
Right, and my understanding is had it been known that we already had a rabies ordinance in place, that the vote would have gone in a different
I
direction.
have no idea where you got that from, but what you're proposing is we vote on it again.
It
don't
is not
understand
the
that.
exact same thing that was originally proposed.
To the extent that it no longer mandates that Bella Vista residents have an option, that was the key factor that we voted on at the last meeting.
Yes, I'm aware.
Okay, well, why would we vote on it again?
Because I'm entitled to offer an amendment.
She is.
You're entitled to, but why would we?
Because I believe there would be a different vote.
You do.
Yes.
Look, I think there's another solution here, that's all
Sure.
I'm saying. And they seem to be really favorable and really open to it. And I don't know where the mandate really came from, but in speaking with them, that's not really where they intended for it to go, and it got there somehow. I'm not saying who got there, but it did, and I think we can come up with something that's really workable and really makes more sense. Because requiring a mandate is not going to solve any problems. Because no one, I mean, it's just like the dog license. I mean, how many pets are not licensed? You know what was interesting is I know there are actually people associated with the animal shelter that have dogs that don't have a license with the city. They didn't even feel compelled to license their dogs. So, it's not a thing. It's just saying. But I think there's another solution to this, and I'd like to work to put something together that might make more sense.
Mayor, I've got a little issue I need to address at an appropriate time. I don't know if you want to.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. One of the things I wanted to suggest is, in order to carry out what is currently in your agenda and what was amended, what Steve offered and got adopted at the last meeting in terms of an amendment. The way that is written, it needs to, our current provision talks about no owner, keeper, harborer of a dog, or the owner, keeper, or harborer of a dog shall license and do these things. The way it's written with the amendment now, it just says dogs are to be licensed, but there's the encouragement of the microchip. But we need to make the change to put in there the owner, the keeper, the harborer shall license. And I know Mr. Wilms asked me to draft an amendment that does that, because he pointed it out to me after the last meeting. Because we have to have a person that is obligated to do this, and we have to have a person that is potentially to receive a citation or who has the legal obligation. And we don't make that clear right now. Without it changing anything substantive, I think we need to make that just to carry it out. And I know Larry has asked me to write that as an amendment, and so I'm going to get that to you, Larry, as soon as I do Linda's as well. So,
Now, but, the other thing too is if we want to give Doug some time, and if some of you want to join him to try and find a solution that may be an alternate, then instead of asking Mr. Kelly to do all this, we may just want to keep it, what's the word?
Table.
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 Until April, maybe,
Yeah.
and give you a month to have a look at it. And if anybody else wants to join Doug, then, you can go and do it. And maybe, if they're going to take over, maybe they take over the license and the
And you always want to be sure that they would be willing to do that, right?
Yeah.
They may not, because it's going to take a little resource, a little time potentially to do that. So let us flush it out
And you
anyway.
can go talk to Sally and see how much, time she spends.
So we're got to do a little more
Probably want
research.
to spend some time with the animal control officer,
Yep.
Officer Pratt.
you all know this, I'll remind you, but if more than one of you get together for this, we'll
Yes.
have to public notify.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's, yes, sir.
I read with enlightenment the full ordinance that the city has about dog licensing, pet licensing, and there are some provisions in there that I think we might want to be more aggressive about, instead of having a fee charged, that a citation would be charged in lieu of, to make it a little bit more, put a little more muscle into it in terms of people abandoning their dogs because they don't want to pay the fee. So I'm thinking that after reading that, it was real enlightening. We might want to put some more teeth in that, and that might be a part of the discussion that your group gets together with Doug.
This is just an in general question, all right? I mean, it goes even like to nuisance ordinances, if you will. What leeway does the city council have for set fines for ordinance infractions? Can you not do that?
The state law caps how much you can have as a fine. You all have adopted a city code. It's that big, thick book. And it has a general penalty provision. So everything in there that could be in that book that's violated, there's a penalty provision in there. If you're asking me, what is it, Jason, right now, I don't remember. I'll have to go back and look. I think it's $1,000 a day. And it only encompasses fines. You don't put anybody in jail for anything. I think the state would allow you to go up to $2,000. I believe that's been modified since our city code was adopted, per violation, with each day a violation is permitted to exist being a new violation. So you do have some room to increase that general penalty. Now, and having said that, you can also adopt specific penalty provisions related to something. So if you wanted to have, maybe you didn't want someone to have to pay $2,000 because their dog was running at large, and you want to cap it at $500, then you could adopt a special provision for that and put it in your animal ordinance and put that in that part of the code. And it would say something, a violation of this chapter shall subject you to a fine of up to whatever. Yes, you do have the authority up to the maximum allowed by state law to set fines for violation of your ordinances.
I think the conversation that just occurred proves that it would be an excellent idea to table this, because we have so much other stuff on the agenda.
Yeah, I like those ideas. Yeah, let's go on the floor and see what we're going to do. Okay.
April or May.
Yeah, April or May,
time.
somebody can
I don't know if
propose.
there's a sense of urgency in that for this.
I'd rather see if we can get it right and get, the animal shelter buying into it as well, and the police buying into it, and make sure it's well written. Okay, good stuff. Now we move into new business. We have an ordinance, which is amending section 107-462, review and approval of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Bella Vista to provide additional time for planning commission consideration of developments subject to its approval. Today, they have 45 days. They're finding themselves a little rushed, and they're asking for 90 days. Doug or Derek, do you have any insight from the planning commission you'd like to share at all, or does that just kind of sum it up?
This was an observation that the Planning Commission had last year in which a more challenging project was on the agenda, and they found with the current time clock of 45 days that can create a difficulty if the owner is not amenable to tabling of the project. That could mean that the Planning Commission would be forced to deny a project. So in order to allow more time for all parties to work out more difficult projects, doubling the time here just would allow for a second public hearing so that the applicant could be given a second chance to submit revised plans.
Anybody have any questions? Yes, sir.
You might want to expound about the provision of rejecting or denying approval and what that does to the applicant.
Right, so if a project is denied, then
Give me an example of a project that would be denied.
One that
Right.
didn't comply with our requirements.
Well, is it a house? Is it a commercial building?
Large-scale
Is it a-
development.
right, so these are, great question, these are only projects that are deemed significant enough that require planning commission review via a public hearing. So these are the larger ones like Shops on the Trail, let's see,
Marijuana.
The relief center.
right, like a new gas station, that kind of thing.
Because
It's,
John was the chairman of a committee way back, and I was, and there was a problem with the builders because it took forever to get things done. And one of the big things came out of that meeting was not only the prices we were charging for the fees, but the length of time.
right.
So I don't want to get into a simple house per se and end up the guy going back to where he was before when it was 3 months opposed to 45 days. If it's a, specific project, or like you're saying, a bigger project, I don't have a problem, but if we're starting to mess with the house thing again, we're gonna end up maybe between rock and hard place with the builders again.
Yeah, so what he's talking about is back in 2015, the builders were complaining that for a house, for example, to get all the plan review done and to get it approved and then get a permit, it was upwards of 7 to 10 days.
But those don't go through before.
These are only
No.
what go to the planning commission, large-scale developments.
Only the
Just
large scale.
as long as it doesn't include houses, I'm fine.
No.
So this in no way does this affect single-family house development.
Okay, I'm good then.
Larry?
So would this be apply to all projects, Derek, or is this something that you would determine based on its complexity when it comes through the door, or it would say up to 90 days for action?
So to clarify, that's a great question. Again, this would only impact this allowance of the additional 90 days for the planning commission to make a decision. It doesn't mean that the time clock on the development calendar is changed. So the time for a standard review is still going to be 42 days for a project going to planning commission. However, this would only provide an option in code in the off chance that there was a more challenging project every other year or every 5 years or something like that, to allow all parties more time to resolve the situation.
So this would be a staff-initiated recommendation to planning commission, and they would say, yes, we want to do that? Or
No, the planning commission is looking for us to do this.
They have 45
This is their
days to
suggestion.
consider something now, and the commission itself wants more time. So they have an agenda item that's going to be for a large-scale development approval, for example. So they've looked at it, and they've got problems with drainage, for example. So they're not satisfied with the drainage plan. They want to see the engineer come back to them with a revised drainage plan for some reason, and so they'll want to deal with it next month. Well, they were getting into a point where they were running out of time, and if you had a developer who said, I'm not going to agree to a time extension. I've brought my application, I need a consideration. Well, the commission itself would really have to deny it if they wanted to act within the time frame, because if they didn't act and the time wasn't waived and the 45 days passed, it's possible they could be deemed approved with deficiencies. And so this just gives them more time to be able to consider things. It doesn't mandate they take the time, or it doesn't change any of the application deadlines or any of that stuff. So that's it.
So that's why I was saying, is it now going to go, the wording going to be along the lines of up to 90 days for approval?
Well, the ordinance is in your packet.
And I guess in response to your comments, Attorney Kelly, that if the applicant is unwilling to comply with the village rules, then appropriately the planning commission should reject it and they should start over.
Well, sometimes there are requirements that we want to see in order to, I mean, there's certain leeway the planning commission has. The ordinance might require them to present a drainage plan,
Right.
but and they've complied. But we would like to see it drain a different way for some reason. I mean, there are all sorts of individualized things that the commission could say, well, we have some authority to say, well, but we want it to come over here this side, or we want the pond to be moved over a few feet, or however that's going to be. So, usually the way this goes, usually the developers are going to waive time, because if they don't, then their project's going to get denied, and they don't want to do that. But if they didn't, and my fear was that the commission would have something on the agenda and there wasn't something in the record that said that the developer had agreed to waive the time, and we would have had to have sent an approval when there were still lacking issues that our planning commission wanted to see.
And my point being is I've worked with engineers who have been reticent to make changes that the community wanted.
Right.
The appropriate action was to reject.
And the
plan
planning commission
and start
absolutely can do that, and the planning commission can absolutely do that. What the planning commission is attempting to do is they are trying to make sure that they have that decision to make and time to make it, and that the clock doesn't make the decision for them.
Look, if the planning commission has requested this of us,
They have.
and it's their commission, and they deem this necessary for them to appropriately, do their business, then, that's hard for me to expert. And I could see where timing could play a part in fouling the whole thing up, not that two sides can't agree.
Sure.
And if it's giving them a little bit more time, is going to allow them to make the correct decision and work with the developer, it just seems like it would be the right thing to do.
And indeed, I would suggest we go to third and final, just to get it out of the way so the planning commission can get to the work. Anybody else? Okay. Then we move into the world of resolutions. The first is expressing the support of the City of Bella Vista for the Arkansas State Highway Commission's designation of State Highway 549, the future I-49 Bella Vista bypass, as a state scenic highway. This is something that Dick Trammell and I started talking about 2 years ago. And it is such a pretty piece of driving up there. We thought it'd be a real shame if people were just allowed to put billboards all over the place. There's enough of that on state highways as you travel around this country, and wouldn't it be nice just to have a pristine piece of land so that you're driving and enjoying the scenery? And I was delighted when this letter that I believe is in your packet arrived from the new commission, and they're asking for our support so that they can go to their powers that be and have it actually deemed as a scenic road. That's where that came from. Linda?
Having lived in Vermont where there are no billboards allowed on any of those highways, it's really nice. And I think having people coming into Arkansas from the north, their first experience to be numerous miles of nice highway would be a great idea.
Are there any other ramifications, pro or con, to being designated a state scenic byway, aside from?
You might get your picture on the state map.
Yeah.
And if you look at the map now,
Right.
it shows the bypass.
Right.
And that was a result because the flowers are up and everything else.
So if it were declared such a state scenic byway, would anything happen to the billboards that are already up?
There aren't any today. Up on the bypass itself?
Oh, no, I was thinking Oh, okay.
This is just a bypass from
Not
the
71.
roundabout up to the border.
Scenic byway.
So how far would that extend, Mayor? Would that go all the way down to the roundabout?
Yeah, from the roundabout up to the border. Yep.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
okay.
think that's a great idea.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Okay, the next is a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to enter into contract with First Employment Staffing in an amount not to exceed $37,565 to provide personnel for seasonal right-of-way mowing for 2010. Michael is here if you have any questions. I think all of you have been here for at least a year now, and that's something that we do every year. Michael, any comments?
Just as you put it, we do it every year.
Okay.
Is the price pretty similar?
That's exactly the same as last year.
Do you get experienced drivers when you put it out like this?
Actually, the two folks that will come over from that first employment, they've been doing it for the past 3 years, so we're getting the same people
Same
back.
people.
Okay, so likelihood that you would get them back again this year?
Yeah, both of them have expressed interest to come back, but they have to funnel that through first
Through their employer. Any other questions? Next is a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to enter into a contract with Sterling Equipment LLC pursuant to a Sourcewell purchasing agreement, cooperative purchasing agreement for the purchase of one new excavator with attachments in the amount of $287,818. This is in the approved 2020 capital budget. Mike, this is yours. It's one of, I think, a number that you're, it's all for one main purpose, is it not?
That's correct.
Is this because we no longer have a stump dump and you're needing to get into the ditches?
Right, of course, I put that all in the memo that I attached. But yeah, that's the basic premise of it, along with, I mean, we're going to use it for all kinds of things, but that's the basic premise. of what
It's in the budget, right?
It's in the budget, yeah.
The memo you mentioned, do we have that?
Yeah, it's in there.
It's in the packet.
Call us the resolution.
Okay, how many bids did we get, Mike?
That's in there also.
No, you're funneling through a cooperative
Oh,
that
that's
already
right.
bids this out
Right.
competitively.
So it's like a
Okay.
state bid?
This is the state
Right,
program?
basically
the same thing.
Okay.
Yes.
So they do the bid and we are able to get
Okay,
into it.
very good.
It's not a state bid, but it's
No.
another exception to the bidding requirement, which is a cooperative
Right.
purchasing program. So it's already been bid, so we're allowed to buy it
Okay.
without bidding it ourselves.
Stripling equipment, is that local?
They are, you know, where Wagon Wheel Road is. Yes.
Springfield.
Okay, and the next resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to enter into a contract with HUD and Hall Equipment, pursuing once again the Sourcewell Purchasing Cooperative Purchase Agreement for the purchase of one new excavator trailer in the amount of $35,480.24. This too is in the approved 2020 capital budget, and it is the trailer that is going to haul the excavator that we just had in the previous resolution.
That is correct.
Is there any discussion on that at all? Okay. And the next resolution, again, you have seen this before every year, authorizing the mayor and city clerk to enter into a contract with Deco Paving in an amount not to exceed $843,000, which is $70.64 per ton for asphalt, street resurfacing, and other street department asphalt paving, and further authorizing the mayor and city clerk to enter into a contract with Vance Brothers in an amount not to exceed $479,031.70, or $2.05 per square yard for Slurry Street resurfacing. Mike, if I remember correctly, Vance Brothers is the only one that does it.
That's been the
Slurry
history
Street.
for probably the past 35 years since I've done this.
And we've had Deco a number of times.
Yeah, they've got bid here in Bellows, I think, 3 times in the past 8 years.
Okay. And is the price radically different from the previous year?
The price that Deco bid is actually the exact same amount that they bid last year. We were actually thinking, obviously, everything goes up, but they put in a very competitive bid. If you look at the other bids there's, I think the highest bid was like $90 a ton. So that's a really good price.
Do we know how many miles we're gonna get this year? Asphalt and snow?
I don't have my memo with me that I gave you guys, but I'm thinking it's 28, I
28,
believe,
okay.
if I can remember off the top of my head.
And we'll be doing Highlands?
Highlands Boulevard, yes, a
Yeah,
portion
one-
of it, not the
yeah,
whole,
I'm
not
sorry,
the
yes.
entirety of
And
it.
that one portion that they couldn't do because of the bad weather last year?
That's correct.
Okay, Larry?
I'd like to see a map with the streets that are proposed for asphalt resurfacing and also showing the separate areas for slurry street surfacing. So that we can visually see where we are, and not that I'm concerned that they're not going to cover Ward 2 fairly. I don't really care about that because I know the priority is to do the streets that are worse streets first, that have a need for it, that based on traffic volume and other parameters. But I'd like to see a graphic that shows those two things.
Yeah,
We
John?
actually, when we take this to bid, the contractor should have provided a map, so we already got that.
So if you could
This would be
include
easy.
that with your packet, that would
And John, this is
Sure.
blessed by the Streets Committee.
Yeah, yeah.
Any questions at all? Alrighty, we'll move on to the next resolution, awarding bid and authorizing the purchase of a dump truck from Custom Truck One Source of Kansas City, Missouri, in the amount of $157,838 for use by the street department. This too is also in the approved 2020 capital budget. Mike, any comments at all?
Got questions?
Is this the dump truck that's going to attach to the excavator?
It's all,
Trailer that's going to pull-
every component that
Right.
you're seeing there. Yes.
Larry?
A question I would have is that this is from sources in Kansas City. Will we have any issues in terms of warranty services on the vehicle, or do we have to take it up there?
No, that will go to the local, this particular truck's gonna be a Mack, and there's a Mack dealership there in Lowell for all warranty type situations that might come up with it.
And the local dealership wasn't able to compete price-wise, or?
They did not have one on the ground ready to go.
They didn't bid.
They didn't bid, yeah.
Okay.
There was only 2 bidders.
And this is a little bit.
No, actually, it's not.
Okay.
It's, I think there's like $1,400 difference between the other bid, but the other bidder did not meet spec.
Okay.
So it doesn't count that they were lower. If they didn't respect.
That's right. You don't meet spec.
It
you
did,
don't-
null and void, correct.
And you're going to
But
see
warranty
some-
services are not going to be a problem if we buy this from a different dealership.
No.
No. It's the same as you buying a car over here, which is your convertible.
Sometimes you get put on a long list for service.
Any other questions? Next resolution, authorizing the mayor and city clerk to enter into a first amendment to the limited terminable license agreement, the Greenway Extension with the Bella Vista Property Owners Association, for the purpose of clarifying the permissible use of Class 1 electric bicycles. If you remember, we approved this on the trails. They have done the same, and now we have to go back to the agreement and actually adjust that to make sure that it's incorporated. It's more like a cleanup, I guess I could say, of the,
It's a clarification that this is going to be allowed, basically.
the next resolution, authorizing the mayor and city clerk to enter into a second agreement with the limited terminable license agreement trail system license with the Bella Vista Property Owners Association, Inc., for the purpose of adding parcels for trailheads. Again, this is standard.
Well, standard, I mean, this adds the areas for trailheads that were not already in the license. So there are trailhead areas that are on parcels that were not included, and so that's what this does. If that's what you mean by standard, that's what it
Yes,
is.
I'm sorry, yeah.
Okay.
So these are POA parcels, common property, if you will, that are being provided by the POA for use for these,
Correct.
for this purpose.
The POA board has approved.
And it doesn't require any kind of economic impact to the city.
No, but we have to get it agreed, and they have to be
Understood.
located, so that in the agreement, it's the same as the trails.
Right.
You know, the trails, there is a section of the agreement where we will have GPS coordinates for every section of the trails,
Right.
so.
And so, again, there's no economic impact to the city on this. This is really just updating the agreement to reflect that there are additional parcels that might not have been there in the first place that are going to be there now.
That is correct.
Peter,
Yeah.
did they decide to have more trailheads or just hadn't?
No, they were the number of trailheads that the Trailblazers had originally said. I think there were, I can't remember, it's probably in your packet, probably 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Larry?
Will there be any impact in the selection of these sites already that will impact existing development or houses that are there? In other words, when we
No, the
get-
POA would have looked at that as part of their deliberations,
Okay.
and I've been told that they passed it.
It's like in an undeveloped areas where they're citing
Yeah.
them, so if somebody builds there next door on the lot, they know it's there and they know what
I
they're
think
getting.
one of them might be under a water tower, if I remember correctly.
Their parking lots and.
Yeah,
they're
the
just a
parking lot,
variety.
really Papa Mike's.
Yeah.
Anything else? Okay, the next is a resolution authorizing the sale of 2 surplus city vehicles currently owned by the city and leased to the recycling center, and 5 surplus city vehicles used by the police department at public auction pursuant to Bella Vista City Code, Section 2-345. Mike was able to give us the name of Mr. Larry Barnes, and Wayne has been working with Mr. Barnes about the ability to pull these vehicles into one of his regular auctions, and he has come back and said that we do currently have an auction scheduled for the first week of April that we could add these vehicles to and get them sold for the city. The recycling one have quite a few miles on it. The 4 are yours and 1 is fire, or are they all yours? I know there was a mix going on at one point. Oh, they're all yours?
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions at all?
They all have a lot of miles.
This is something that, again, we normally do. The next resolution, awarding bid and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to enter into a contract with Benchmark Construction of Northwest Arkansas in the amount of $2,478,183.01 for the Blowing Springs to Metfield Park Greenway connection. I believe in your packet there's an actual bid sheet, a bid tabulation sheet that was put together by EDG, the Ecological Design Group, which was the one who went to bid. They list all the bids for you. The actual lowest was NEC. However, if you look across, they did not
Meet spec.
They did not meet spec. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 areas they did not meet spec. So that disqualified them. So the next was Benchmark, and that's why you've got the Benchmark name here in the resolution. Does this include or exclude the construction oversight, the construction management oversight?
That's separate.
That's
part
separate.
of the grant.
Okay.
Do we have a complete budget on this project that lists the construction and all the other costs?
We do. I can pass that out. As you're looking at this, if you just flip it over, it'll show the colors.
Okay, so you may want to have a look at this. It's very detailed, as you can see. There are engineering plans available as well, which have been completed. I'm not going to go through this tonight, but I would suggest that you have a look at it, and then would encourage you later this week, if you have questions, to get in touch with Doug, and he can line you up with EDG if he's unable to answer your questions.
I guess this doesn't really answer my question. What I was asking for is a complete project cost statement that says, here's the construction now, here's the engineering for design, here's the engineering for construction oversight, here's a contingency, here's legal costs, here's whatever else costs are in there, so that we have a total picture of what the total
I can
outlay
give you
is.
that.
Yeah, we can get
I
you
can
that.
give you that.
Could you put it in the packet, please? That gives us a big picture of the whole thing and where it fits in the budgeted money and all the rest of it. This is only a piece of that big,
And remembering, of course, this is not our money.
I know. But
Okay.
to be good stewards.
Any other questions at all? Okay, the very last one is a resolution awarding bid and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to enter into the, oh, I'm sorry, that's the one I just read. We have to put a tick mark, now we're into discussion items. There are a few things that are not included in here that will be included in the final packet, but there are some bid timelines. So Chief, you want to address the security fence first, please?
Sure, we went out to bid for security fence, we received 2 bids back. The one that I believe will do our business the best is out of a company out of Virginia. I know they're out of state, this gentleman does work across the country, actually saves the city well over $10,000 from the other bid. Obviously, the low bid that low was a little concerning to me initially, but I call all of his references, he checks out. So I gave the proposed contract to Jason to review, and the idea is to get it in front of the next council meeting to take a look at it, to see if you folks agree with this contract. It fulfills all of our requirements. He's proposing to start April 10th. There will be a delay on the gate. It's apparently at this point in the country, it's about a 16-week possibly fabrication of the gate, so the gate may not be until September 1st.
Okay.
But everything else will be done. A portion of the money will be paid after the initial portion of the fence is built, with the remainder of $15,000 to be paid after the gate's installed. This gentleman comes in himself, it sounds like he acts as a contractor and subs out all the work in the areas he does his work. So, you know, folks around here who work around here will receive some of the proceeds for the contract because he'll be subbing out that work. He doesn't bring a crew with him, he subs out all the electrical work, and apparently he's done it all across the country and has the connections to do it. So I'm comfortable using him because I've checked out. He sent me 5 references. I was able to get a hold of 4 of them. They're all happy with his work and fully satisfied. And their references were probably within the last, the oldest was maybe 3 years ago. Most were within the last year or 2.
And then the Gartronics cost would be on top of that?
The Gartronics cost will be on top of that, but that money was already built in. The money the city council authorized is well enough. His pricing is 37 and change. The next closest bid was close to 49 and change. So this is a substantial savings to the city if this gentleman can do it.
Any questions at all for Chief?
I would ask for a statement of the complete project layout for costs, because you had some engineering or architectural or whatever for design and the bid package, and then the construction contract, and then your add-on stuff that you just mentioned, to see what that total bottom line is.
We'll be happy to share the bid with you.
Sure. So I mean, all of the project is described. He used the exact same verbiage we use in our bid.
I understand, but I'm looking at not just the construction cost, Chief. I'm looking at, here's the construction, here's the add-ons that we have to do, the electronic thing add-on later. That's in there.
For Gartronics?
Yeah, and here's the additional cost for the engineering or the specs or whatever.
And there was no engineering.
There's no engineering.
It's a fence.
No, yes. So I can get a hold of Gartronics and try to get them to give us a rough estimate on what it's going to
You
cost.
see what our total is, you see what I'm talking about is all of the pieces that make up your total package at the bottom line here. Because that's really what we're authorizing in the bottom.
So the only thing you're really missing then is going to be, because his cost of 37 and change is all inclusive. That's the fence, that's the labor, that's the permitting. He takes care of all of that. We come out 37 and change. He does everything to permit it, and to put the fence in the ground, to put the gate up, to have it operational, to hire the subs to do the electrical work. The only piece you would be missing is Gartronics. What is their expense going to be to come out and to fob the gates and that? And I can get a hold of Gartronics and we can try to get a good estimate for that. I'm not sure if I'll get that by Monday though, because Gartronics is sometimes difficult.
Well, you have a budgeted number that you're working on now.
We do, and I know we're going to be well within budget because we had enough estimated to cover Guardtronics, even if we went with the high bid of 49,000 and change. So I think council authorized 55,000. So that was more than enough. So I know with 37,000, we have well more than enough to cover Guardtronics expenses. So if you're asking, I can guarantee we won't go over budget. And we'll probably be well under budget. But I can still try to get that number from Guardtronics for you.
If not, use what you have in preliminary.
Yeah, so.
I hate busy work.
Anybody else, Jim?
I just, I'm looking at that, and that's just busy work for somebody.
Well, it gives us the picture of what the total out-of-pocket is for the security.
Well, it's just like,
fencing
they
program.
handed us that sheet of paper, and unless we're an engineer, we really don't have a clue what all that means. It's just a bunch of
And I
numbers.
appreciate that, and the reason that I asked Doug for a breakdown of saying, here's the construction, here's the design.
I understand, but you could just as easily walk out there and get it and be done.
Well, I think you should have an interest in what that total,
As long as he's under budget, I'm a happy guy.
I understand.
Chief Graves, thank you
But you
for,
don't know that based on this.
So,
No, but I don't trust him, man, that's why he's still working for us.
Okay,
so the
Mr.
contract will have the exact layout of the fence in the contract, okay? And it specifies, and Jason will read it, that this is what we'll pay, basically. He covers everything else.
Okay. Steve?
I just want to say thank you for the extra effort. You're using somebody that's not local, we're not familiar with, so the extra effort going into contacting references and making sure this guy's solid, I appreciate that very much. Thank you for that.
Okay, Chief Sims?
Okay. The fire department went out for bid for a 2020 Tahoe and received one bid from Superior Automotive out of Silver Springs. And we're just going to be on there what our thought process is on that. We were originally going to get rid of the 2008 Chevy Tahoe, but with our community paramedic, the mayor has signed some agreements with Humana. We're starting to do some work with Humana, and Humana themselves have identified over 1,400 high acuity patients here in Bella Vista that we can see to help keep them out of the hospital and keep them out of the emergency room and so forth. In order to do that, I wanted to add that vehicle right there as a standalone community paramedic vehicle where it's making only those calls, set up to make those calls within the city. So adding this additional will give us that room to be able to have that dedicated vehicle as a community paramedic vehicle. That's what we're looking at. And it is in the budget.
Any questions at all, Larry?
The vehicle that you're talking about, the 2020 vehicle would be the one for Humana service?
No,
or
the
2000
08, we're
the
going to use
older
the
one.
08, the
Older
older
one.
vehicle as that vehicle since it's going to be
The older one that
not
you
used
have.
as much. That's
Okay.
correct.
The new one that you have, is this completely outfitted with all the lights, bells, whistles, and horns?
The budget has all of that included in it.
But-
It'll be the outfit, the lights, radios, and all the equipment we need to put on a truck for a response vehicle.
So how does this cost compare to the budget in terms of what's left? Are you saying that the budget number is still a good number, or?
Yes.
Yes, the budget number.
Yes, the budget's number, a good number, and then we'll work with that to make it work out.
Chief Sims, I think I recognize Superior in Siloam Springs as part of the state program. That's the provider.
They are, and this year, their Tahoes aren't on that bid process, so we had to go out for a competitive bid.
Oh, you did?
So, and we got it for what we would get, basically competitive bid pricing for.
Very good.
Okay, so many years ago when the city was first pulled together, there was a scramble to grab ordinances so that we would have something available for builders and everything. And I think the thought at that time, if I remember correctly from talking to the chairman of our planning commission, who was one of the people tasked with that, was that someday we would go back and we would have a look at the ordinances and try and clean them up. Doug has been working with the builders. He's actually pulled together quite a list, but there are 4 that he's showing here. 3 are kind of with the builder, and then the dead trees is a little different. Doug, do you want to talk us through it, please?
Sure. Yeah, these came about from many discussions with builders, citizens, and staff. Just some ways to clarify and make our ordinances easier to read and enforce. And I originally came to Jason and the mayor with about 9 or 10 things, and we decided to bring 4. These are just for discussion, proposed ordinance changes that will make things easier on us and the building community. Number 1, the frost line, that's what determines how deep they have to build a footer. And our frost line, overwhelmingly felt by builders, is way too deep. That, in essence, costs them a lot more concrete money than if they were to go to Bentonville or Rogers or Fayetteville or Springdale to build a house. And so I did some research, talked with the state plumbing inspector. I've spoken with building inspectors in most of the surrounding communities. And our frost line is deeper than anybody else's. And so we're just trying to adjust ours so that they'll save them a row of block on the footer or additional concrete in the footer. To the tune, I've heard from many of them, $1,500 to $2,000 per house.
So our current is 24 inches and we want to go to 18 inches?
I want to go to 18. That's set by local jurisdiction. You can get online and look at maps of where frost lines ebb and flow across the country. And if you start calling around, you'll hear everything from 6 inches in Bentonville to 12 inches in Fort Smith to even north of us in Missouri in some places, less than what we're requiring here. So we just felt like this would be a good move. Our footer requirements go above and beyond what the ICC building code requires. And so if you'll notice, I put in there, not only we would like to reduce the frost line, we would also like to reduce our what our ordinance calls for in the rebar in the footer. I've got one of these for everybody that I could pass out, but currently our ordinance asks for 3 runs of rebar sitting on chairs with a piece of crossbar every 2 feet. That's a whole lot of rebar. ICC building code says you can build a footer without any rebar. We require not just 3 runs, but that has to be elevated and then crossbars every 2 feet. Surrounding communities are everything from no rebar, 1 rebar, 2 rebar. So the consensus I've gotten from builders is that they feel like they could build a 3-story house on 2 runs of rebar with no crossbars. And so after many, many months of discussion with builders and contractors and structural engineers, we felt like 2 runs of rebar without the crossbars would be sufficient. Any questions on that frost line?
What would you need from us? Is this a change in an ordinance?
This is a discussion about potentially changing an ordinance
Okay.
at
So
a next meeting.
that would be in the future. You're not ready to do it in the regular session?
I'm ready.
I'm not ready because I haven't written it yet.
I just wanted to talk it over with you before we just came with an ordinance and explain.
Larry?
I have some sentiment towards what Doug is saying here. 24 inches versus the 18, we're being conservative, but we are, in terms of the landscaping side of things, in a different region than most of the areas around us, I'm told by the landscaping folks. So the 24 inches is not necessarily out of order, but it makes us different than our neighboring communities. My understanding is that the state standard minimum is 18 inches for cover for plumbing as the frost depth, and that would be the least I would be inclined to go. It doesn't hurt us certainly to be more, but it does add cost to the buildings. Regarding the reinforcing steel, I think the three rebars in there might be somewhat excessive. Certainly the crossbars are. Putting it on chairs is a different issue, and what you find is that if they don't use the chairs to support it, what happens is that the steel either falls down to the ground or they try and pull it up with a hook, and it ends up to be somewheres, and then while the concrete is still wet and curing, it settles back down slowly to the bottom, so you've lost all the benefit of that rebar in there.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of removing the chairs.
I think some crossbars in there are appropriate, but probably 2-foot spacing is a little overkill, along with the third for the railing there?
It's none of the surrounding communities around us.
Do you have like an engineer's report that talks about it, or is it just a conversation?
It's conversations with engineers, structural engineers, and builders.
The reinforcing steel is critical for the stability and the strength of that footing itself, because they do have to dig down to virgin soil, if you will, undisturbed soil. So you're theoretically building it on a good foundation, but the steel in there
This would be asking
very
to
worthwhile.
reduce the width of the footer, which disperses the weight of the structure.
Well, it does, but that steel there keeps the concrete from pressing down and failing. It holds it together, if you will, concrete in. Compression is really great. You can pile it up like this and put a load on the top. But when you want to put a load on the bottom of the concrete layer and a beam, which is the footing is nothing but a beam in the ground, holding the floor above it, it doesn't do well in tension, and that's why the steel is in there to hold it all together. And so reducing the steel is probably not going to be a big compromise, and you've concluded that with your discussions with builders and engineers. Going less than 2, no, but I think some reduction might not compromise our building quality overall in the city. I think that's your goal.
Anybody else have
Yeah, I'm glad to see this. I've had builders fussing with me about this for several years.
Yep.
So I'm glad to see it.
All right, Doug, property maintenance code.
Property maintenance code is a way for the city to keep existing homes safe. So right now, if we get a call from someone, or we are driving by doing a survey and we see a problem with the house, a tree fell on the house, there's a hole in the roof, water is getting in, siding's missing, weatherproofing is gone, we don't have a way to enforce on that. So we can enforce on new construction, but this would give us a complete guideline for enforcing on existing structures, everything from exterior handrails, roofing, siding, safety lighting, occupancy limitations. We get calls quite a bit. They've got 12 people living in the house, and there's really no way to even check on that or enforce that with our county codes. It's all about just keeping folks safe. Plumbing, electrical issues, if we get calls on those, this would give us a way to send out a building inspector to check some of those things. Fire safety requirements, vacant, unsafe structures. If a house burns, this would give us a way to enforce on the owner to either tear it down or bring it back to code.
Okay, any questions on it?
In Little Rock, in North Little Rock, you use that ordinance to get into drug houses, to get them to empty them out or fix them. You go in there and find all the errors and say you get X number of days to fix them, and if they don't fix them, the house is empty all of a sudden. And they use that kind of ordinance to do it.
Doug, you're talking, just so they know, the maintenance code you're talking about is one of the standardized maintenance codes that, is it the International Code Council puts that out, that
That's
folds
correct.
into our building
It's
code?
about many cities around the state.
So is this both visual and complaint driven? You know, you're driving along, you see it,
Yes.
or it's complaint driven?
We're driving by and the front porch is falling, and we feel like it's going to hurt somebody. This will give us a way to go send a letter to the owner that says you need to bring this up and repair this.
So this is a little different, I mean, this is a little different than the conversation we had the other day,
Yes,
right?
it is.
That's a kind of, all right,
But it'll give a little more
Yeah,
color
yeah.
to it too.
okay.
Larry?
Would this apply to commercial properties as well as residential?
I believe so, but this is primarily geared towards residential.
So the
We
next
rarely
question-
get calls on distressed commercial properties.
I'm assuming with most residential sales in the city, we have a building inspection done for compliance of condition. Is that pretty much standard?
It's up to, I would say 99% of the transfers, the buyer requests
One
an
of those.
inspection.
So that's-
But that doesn't require the sellers to necessarily do anything.
Correct.
And there's no requirement to bring it up to code at transfer.
So would we want to include some of that provision in there to safeguard the prospective buyers?
Well, that's a whole different, you're getting into a whole different realm there. You're talking about mandating certain real estate contract terms upon upon
Transfer of
sale.
ownership.
That's all different, that's entirely different than adopting a property maintenance code. I mean, you can, the council may have authority to get into that, but that's kind of a different, you can certainly reference your property maintenance code in that kind of requirement, but, what is that? Okay.
Fireman's got
Sorry, I got distracted. They're trying to work around here. But that is really different than what, I would not suggest folding that into adopting a property maintenance code. I mean, that would be kind of a separate additional ordinance.
Okay.
Okay?
All right, anything else?
Mayor, as we approach the end here, I know everybody gets eager to go, but some of our standard updates were not included on this one. Could we add to our list here, 2040 plan, where we're at with
Yeah,
that?
that's fine, but Doug has finished that.
Central Trails, Sunset Drive, add to our list.
Yeah, I've got the other two.
All right.
Okay, Doug, fence height around the front of the structure.
Yes, sir. So currently, when we issue a permit to someone for a fence around the front of their property, it's 4 feet max. And the ACC limit is 3. So we're in essence telling folks they can go build a 4-foot fence, and then one of the enforcement folks from the ACC drives by and sees it exceeds their height restriction, and then we get a call saying, why did you let us build a 4-foot fence at the ACC's only going to let us build a 3-foot fence? And so we're just trying to better align and save a lot of confusion for folks that come in and want to build a fence.
Are they required to get a fence permit from ACC when they do a fence? So they would tell them at the time that it's supposed to be capped at 2 feet?
Supposed to. Doesn't always happen.
Doesn't always happen.
No.
But the fence builders probably know that, right?
Maybe.
Probably.
I would say
Some do,
they
some don't.
certainly-
Depends on where they're from and how many they've done around here.
Homeowner might not though. If they're doing it
If they do it
themselves.
themselves, you're right. But if they've gotten the ACC permit, I would assume that the ACC...
It should be so, but apparently it's not always the case.
And the last one is just,
I guess relative to that, I am frustrated at trying to enforce the ACC provisions.
Well, technically, we're not enforcing their provisions. We're mirroring them and enforcing our own.
So in essence, you're doing that.
What we're trying to do is make it easier for the residents.
they, when the ACC drives by, you know this, and sees a fence that's 4 foot tall, and they don't, I mean, this could be a $2,000 or $3,000 fence. If they don't cut it down, they get a lawsuit. So we're trying to, and then we get a call after that. So we're trying to alleviate some of that confusion.
Dead trees?
So yeah, I just would look for a way to add the dead tree, the word dead tree to the current ordinance that we have that outlines overgrown brush, high grass, weeds, leaves building up. There's just nothing in there that, it says unsightly, but it does not say dead tree. And we get calls quite often from neighbors saying, there's a dead tree next to my property line. Is there anything you can do to make them cut it down?
I have actually a little knowledge on the history about that. I think in the past, and of course that's all different council, different mayors, they did not want the city getting into the tree cutting down business because they felt like they'd be doing a lot of it, and because of the nature of our city. Because we do get, as you know, we do get a lot of calls, and then it would be all of a sudden what is a private matter now becomes a public matter, and we will be called upon to cut down all those trees, notice property owners, and then we'd be taking on that issue. And so in the past, that was specifically not something they wanted to do. We may want to do that now, but I think you can expect a lot of phone calls about it.
But this is developed property you're talking about, not empty lots.
Well, even it's...
I mean, a dead tree is an unsafe, you got kids playing, people driving by, and if it's, in the winter it's hard to tell, but in the summer you can tell easily if the tree is dead or not. If it's on their property, it's their responsibility. Not now, because we can't enforce on that, but it would be their responsibility to have it cut down. Homeowners.
It's their responsibility is what we're trying to get at.
But this is part of our ordinance that requires people to cut weeds and not have unsightly conditions and all that. And every year we go through and notice up people and go cut yards and put liens on property because they have not done it or are not paid. So we'll be in that business with the dead trees, potentially, if they don't comply.
Not many, we don't do many.
Right. But if
Not
we-
many liens on cutting the grass.
But if we add dead trees, you're probably going to be doing more. My concern would be the definition of a dead tree. Now, you might think that that's an easy thing.
That is a very serious
I
concern.
sold a house last week. It's got a two-pronged walnut tree. This side is definitely dead. This side isn't. So is that a dead tree?
It's not a dead tree. A forester,
Unless you split the difference.
horticulture.
Well, but I think, you would think dead tree is real simple, but I don't think
That's
it's
a limb
a
that
simple
needs to be trimmed.
definition.
We'll need to carefully define what that term means.
Yes.
Just a thought, we get that call every couple, 3 weeks.
And actually, dead trees are very good for wildlife habitat.
On unimproved lots.
Yes, sir.
One question would be, is that this would then become an added item on your code enforcement guys or gals list? When they go around, they find something is dead, are you going to inform them if you have a situation like Miss Lloyd?
Oh, yeah, we would discuss
described?
it.
You would tell them, hey, you're gonna have to
Sure.
do maintenance on that tree because it's dead and trees.
Yeah, we probably wouldn't be driving around
Not just for that
looking
purpose,
for
but-
trees that are iffy. I mean, these are mainly the neighbors calling saying, I've been looking at this tree for 4 years, it's gonna fall, can you do something about it?
Okay. Sunset, we reached out to Mr. Sainsbury. He's the project manager who reports directly to Dr. Hull. And if I remember correctly, there was going to be an internal meeting between Mr. Sainsbury, Dr. Hull,
And their attorneys.
and their attorneys to figure out just what to do next. They still have hired that third company to fix the road, but there's still questions as to how they're going to handle Baldwin Shell.
Correct.
Right. So Baldwin Shell was the original construction company. And so they're still having internal legal discussions that they've been having for 2 years.
We have done final inspection on the building. There's a punch list of about 15 items that they need to clean up. But they don't have water because the water's up in the road, so they're well aware that they can't use the building until they get water in there. We pressure tested it, but we haven't tested sinks and flushing and showers and those sort of things.
And they won't get a certificate of occupancy until the room's fixed.
Correct.
And they won't. Okay. Trails, they're still working on the one in 340. After that, there may be another tunnel in 279. They haven't figured out yet if they have the budget for it, is that correct?
So it does appear that if they, so they're getting really close to just verifying some numbers, and based on the last meeting that we had with Trailblazers and the contractor rep, it does appear that they can do it well within the overall grant budget that we have.
That's the additional tunnel in 279.
That would be the last and final one of the system on
And
279.
there's about 2 miles left of soft surface.
South Service,
Yeah,
it's getting close.
I know we've got 36 volunteers that are already signed up, and they're out here helping us.
Where the trail go, I mean, the tunnel on 279?
It is, it's north of the one that was just complete. I'll have to get back to you for the,
That's
for
okay.
the exact
I can
cross street.
I'm just curious.
North of the one they did up by Cambria or
No, that's 340.
Camden or whatever it is up there?
That's 340. No, this is on 279. This is
Fort
on
Forest Hills.
No, Cambria.
Cambrian's on 279.
Cambria is on,
Oh, it's
Cambria,
okay, I
not
thought you meant
Camden.
Okay.
it's actually the Cooper development there.
Yes.
Okay, so you'll have a peek at it.
So it's going north of that one that they
It-
just they put in up there?
I'm sorry, I'll definitely, I'll make sure that we can report back through the mayor and provide that clarification to you all, this week as far as the exact location.
We've got a map that is kind of marked on there, we can send you.
Yeah. But this is the one that was so convoluted with utilities that months ago it was put to the end of the line because it seemed so complicated, but now it seems like in working with the utility contractors, there may be a solution to just drop it a few feet further south and actually miss a lot of these that we thought were going to be a major concern. And it just means that the pipe has to get slightly longer to meet grade at either side, but still extending the pipe is much cheaper than having to conflict with the moving of the utility line.
Okay.
Doug? 24. Comprehensive?
2040 has been printed, and we have copies ready for Planning Commission. And that's going to be on their April work session. And as soon as they get a recommendation to you to adopt it, then we can bring it to the next available work session.
I'd like to sign out a copy of that draft if I could to look at. I had trouble with the electronic version because you can't look at two sections at the same time unless you have two computers.
I've got one ready for you.
I don't have two computer screens at home, so I can't look at two sections to see how the language.
He's got one ready for you, so. He's got one ready for you.
So that's why you didn't get any comments finally back. The last draft.
Peter?
Yep.
I was wondering if the city was starting to think about contingency plans for sales tax shortfall, given some of the economics.
Yep, we talked about it today in the staff meeting. If you remember the financial package of policies that we passed in 2018, it addresses it. If you start to see the curve down, the first stopgap is we have to look at cutting expenses by roughly 5%. And then if it continues, then we go to 10%, because we have to protect the minimum of the 25%. Now, having said that, if you look at your financial statements, we are in exceptionally good shape when it comes to the so-called reserve. We're looking at 7.1 million at the moment. And it's 46% instead of being 25. But we did review it this morning at the staff meeting, and everybody was given another copy of the financial policy to take home and read. And we did review what actions would have to be taken if we see a revenue drop. It's going to be interesting to see if it really happens. Certainly with the restaurants closing, which I suspect will happen because of the new directive not to have more than 10 people meeting together. Will people be buying more on the internet? Don't know. And we don't have a lot of track record on the internet, but it'll be interesting to see what's going to happen. So Carrie is going to be watching it very closely for us. Good question, thank you, Larry.
But you say we have $7+ million now in reserves, but isn't that a misleading statement in the sense that some of that money is committed to projects, but it hasn't been spent yet? So it's not really.
Of course, of course.
So what I'd like to see, I guess, for us to assess is you got 7 million, but of that 7, you got 3 million that's committed to capital projects, so you really only have 4.
The capital projects that we just discussed.
Yeah.
Those are the big ones.
Yeah.
Okay? So then you do the math, and we're still good on the 25%. It still comes out a little higher.
Yeah.
So if you add up everything that you see in there and subtract it from over here, then you'll see what we're left with.
What I'm saying, the real report is that we don't have 7 million in reserves, we have less than 7 million in reserves.
Yeah, but you haven't passed
Because
anything
we've got
yet.
it committed over here.
That's right, but you haven't passed anything yet. That'll happen at the next meeting, and then I can tell you what the adjusted is going to be.
These capital projects that we reviewed tonight, some of those are funded by reserve.
No.
Well, reserve is a misnomer. We don't have a reserve per se. We have agreed that we will always keep a certain amount of cash on hand.
Right.
And it's usually in the form of CDs, and that's the municipal depository board that meets.
Right.
And then the difference, we can regulate and spend accordingly.
Right, okay. So we report a reserve. We report a line item that is our total reserve.
Correct.
And that's what's at 7.1 million.
Yeah.
But you're saying some of the capital projects that we reviewed tonight are funded?
They are
out of
funded
that
through
reserve.
that, that's right. And then, if you're reading your financial statements, you'll also see that the revenue is above the budget, and we are currently running expenses below the budget.
Right.
Okay?
That's
So that-
why our reserves usually, well, if you want to, again, it's kind of not really reserves, but that's why we stay so whole typically, is we don't spend as much as our expenses
Even our
are laid
budget.
out to be. Right.
And I will tell you wholeheartedly, I have a terrific group of department heads, very, very frugal. They look at everything, and they analyze it before they even begin to say, can we really afford it?
Right. So all these capital projects that we reviewed tonight are all being filtered in the light of the current environment that we have here and the possibility that we could be in for a substantial revenue hit over the course of the year. You guys have already factored that in. It's
We've
not
already
like
factored that in. Now, remember the trails, okay, the extension, that's not our money.
right. I'm not worried about that.
That's right.
I'm worried about those things that are our money that do come out of that reserve
Right.
because I think there's a really good chance now we're going to need reserve to carry out even the minimal amounts of city services.
That's true.
Possible. We could get to that point.
We could get there.
You mean into the 25% reserve, or just
Well-
into the, just what we call reserve
Into,
anyway?
yes, into reserve. The purpose of the reserve is really for such an emergency is what we're dealing with now. So that would be the purpose of having a reserve. We've tried to keep a floor on it in operating in good times. But if there's a declaration of emergency, all that reserve is available to run the city to do, to provide the services that need to be provided at a minimal level, right?
I got a question on the building of the Walmart new campus.
Yeah.
So whenever the taxes are collected on that, is there a portion of county tax as well that goes into county coffers?
Off the
On the
Walmart?
building? Yeah,
Yeah.
off the building to building. Yeah, okay.
The county may, I don't have, are they considering a sale, there are those provisions that allow for a sales tax break on certain developments. You know, they did that on the big Simmons chicken
That's true.
thing out on the west side. I don't know if Walmart
I
is
don't
going
think
to
they
pursue
do.
that on this project or not. I doubt it,
I don't think they did. no.
but I don't know.
We were reading any.
Yeah. I mean, that's something, you could see something like that that may affect county tax, but that's just off the top of my head, I don't know.
I don't think they already went through. Yeah. Okay, good discussion. Thank you. Anybody have anything else they'd like to chat about this evening? All righty. And now, before you go, the meeting next Monday. And now we're facing a situation where the fellow at the top has said, as a result of talking to the CDC, we shouldn't be congregating at 10 or more. And as someone pointed out, you know, you can just go around the table here and count. We cannot stop people from coming and watching city government. So you can't just say, I'm sorry, it's just for the 7, 8, 9 of us, and go and watch it on TV. Now, we have said last week in a press release that we are not encouraging people to come because of the current situation. But we cannot legally stop them from walking in the door. So one of the things that I'll be watching for is it getting progressively worse? Does there seem to be some light at the end of the tunnel? Weighing that against the various projects. And that's why I've asked the department heads to go back to each of these groups that have provided us quotes. Can you carry that quote, because sometimes there's times on them, into the beginning of April? And I think, was it you, Chief, who said, I think we'll be okay on the fence? Or
I haven't been able to get a hold of him, but I do
Okay.
think we'll be okay.
one of you came and said, I think we're going to be okay. Was it the one from Superior?
I think we'll be all right
Yeah.
on that if we have
Okay.
to.
So we've got to double check and make sure that we're solid, so that we're not going to be faced with more expense further on. Okay? So if you want to chat with me later about it, that's fine, one-on-one. But we'll just move with all sorts of caution, because first and foremost, we must preserve the safety of our residents. Okay? All right, thanks very much, safe home.